Here's an update on Ukraine in 20 headlines. So, first, we'll start with this heavy shelling in Donetsk. That region is getting torn up. The Russians are moving most of their forces to the south, but at the same time, they're still trying to attack on multiple axes in Donetsk, trying to capture what is really their big prize. So it's still a mess. It's still going on. They're incrementally taking ground, but it's not pretty. Okay, next, defending Bakhmut, how Ukraine is countering the Russian offensive in the Donbass. Well, they are. They're very slowly losing ground, and it's a they're holding the line, but it is a very slow, hard slog for the Russians where they're losing a lot of soldiers. Okay, death toll from Yervin Bland reaches six. Six people died, 61 injured in an explosion Sunday. Where? In a shopping center. Really? In a shopping center? Okay. Um, Next, Russia inflicts 73 times more strikes on civilian targets than on military ones. 73 times. Like if you go down and read the article, you see only 300 military strikes, 22,000 civilian objects struck. This is the way that the Russians have conducted the war. Next, Ukraine claims that it has struck a base used by Wagner Group paramilitaries, and this was big news. They hit a command center of some sort where the Wagner paramilitary soldiers. It's a company. It's not actual soldiers. Were operating, and so that's good news for Ukraine. Okay, next. Amid safety fears, Russia pledges access. Now, I highlighted Russia pledges access to Ukraine's nuclear power plant for a reason. Yeah, come on in. Okay, but they gave the same come on in to the prison where the explosion happened, where the Azovstal fighters were held. But nobody's been there. UN hasn't been there. Red Cross hasn't been there. So they're pledging access, but their word is as good as, well, that and $5 will buy you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. The Verkhovna Rada, that's their parliament, calls on the UN and European countries to recognize Russia's activities at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as a terrorism act. Yeah, you can't hide behind a nuclear power plant and use it as a shield and fire from there, and that's breaking all the rules. Of course, Amnesty International's asleep. Rada extends martial law for 90 days. This is just because they extended it. So it's going to the 23rd. Okay, the invasion, remember, was the 24th of February. It got extended once. It's getting extended a second time. Kherson clampdown. Russian authorities are going door to door mandating Russian passports. They're making people in Kherson use Russian money, use Russian passports, Russian driver's license in an effort to Russify before they have some sort of referendum. Okay, next. New Zealand to deploy 120 troops to Britain to train Ukrainian troops. So Britain is training in cycles 10,000 Ukrainian troops. The Canadians just sent people to help train. I think Norway just did it recently. New Zealand is now going to be part of that effort as well. Okay, Russia is urged to withdraw forces from Ukraine, a nuclear power plant, and then here Putin turns to North Korea for friendship. Well, if your mom ever said stop hanging out with those people because you're going to be kind of like your friends, well, that's why this one is important. Okay, next one. Ignoring Ukraine's setbacks, Putin touts superior Russian weapons exports. Okay, so in this, Putin is selling Russian military hardware to other nations, to India, China, and other nations. The trick is, it's kind of like trying to sell a computer, and then as you're demonstrating it, it keeps coming up with the blue screen of death. It's not really, Ukraine's really not a good look for these Russian exports of weapons, but they sell a lot. They sell like a fifth of the world's weapons. Okay, now we're going to turn our attention to the fun portion where we're going to look at RT and Pravda. Germany opposes Russian visa ban, says Schultz. Okay, good people can disagree about things, and Schultz is essentially saying that don't do this visa ban because you're punishing dissidents who had to flee Russia. I understand what Zelensky's saying. He's saying no, they need to be back in there protesting their own country. But if they're legitimately trying to help the war effort outside it, I would think that that's probably an okay thing as well. But that's just me. But they're making hay out of this because Schultz is opposing it. Next, scale of damage to UK companies by anti-Russia sanctions is revealed, and they're saying, oh, look at all the inflation and all the bad things that are happening to these UK countries. It's all because of Western sanctions on Russia. It's not. It's because the war is throwing things into a tailspin. It's because post-COVID things are going bad. Western sanctions are a part of it, but it's not the only part. Next, the price of defeat. The U.S. fled Afghanistan exactly 1 year ago, but the real consequences are yet to come. This was a huge propaganda piece where they're just saying, see what the U.S. did. They turned their tail and they fled, and see what a black eye. I want to show you a couple pictures of this as well. I actually know one of the pilots that was flying one of these planes. The airbase from which this came was right down the street from my house. And yeah, remember this about a year ago? This was a terrible signal that Joe Biden sent to the rest of the world saying, see, we're demonstrating weakness. And I think Putin seized on it. Okay, next. China lectures U.S. over Afghanistan withdrawal. They keep calling these Kabul moments, and the U.S. is going to have more of these Kabul moments if they keep up trying to be hegemonic. The Chinese like calling the U.S. hegemonic for some reason. British MP explains how Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov outplayed Boris Johnson. Here, they found a politician who didn't like Boris Johnson, who happened to be the UK Labour MP. Go figure, who would have thought a Labour MP would have bad stuff to say about Boris Johnson? U.S. district pledges to fire white staff first. So RT likes anything that gives the U.S. any kind of black eye, and no pun intended. The idea here is that white teachers will be the first to be fired in Minnesota. The way that they framed it sounds a little bit more. What it's actually saying is that minorities are going to be protected classes when it comes to downsizing if you have to downsize. I don't like it. I think it's a bad idea, but the way that RT played it out was even worse. Okay, RT again. Ukraine is bankrupt. Well, they kind of are. They need $5 billion a month in order to stay solvent. So they're not wrong, but they're making a big thing out of something that's kind of duh. They're bankrupt because you keep firing missiles at them and breaking their country. So stop it. And then finally, war correspondent says Kyiv switches to the tactics of duct tape and toilet paper, which I'm not sure I quite understand, but essentially they're out of stuff. They're just cobbling things together in order to fight back. That's what it is. Okay, so that's a good representation of what's in the news today. It's the 173rd day of the war, August 15th. And I hope that helps you understand what's going on in Ukraine. If you like this, if you listen to this so far, please subscribe if you're the kind of person that cares about Ukraine and wants to keep informed.